All right, we're just getting started. This is being recorded, so I will start speaking for those listening. It's maybe our fourth or fifth monthly Handshake Mastermind Twitter space, State of the Blockchain. So we're improving each time, and I'll be inviting up Mike Carson in a second. Of course, we're trying to have this as an open floor and welcome anyone. Of course, don't be a spammer or a scammer, but we try to encourage everyone to share. We want this to be an open platform for the community. So I'm sending invites to co-hosts and people to share with. It's 7 a.m. for me in Thailand, bright and early. I know we got people in the US. I know it's late for people in Europe. We're trying our best to find the right time for everybody. And disappeared. Oh, wait, no, I see her here. So we got a lot to talk about. It's definitely not boring here. Definitely not boring. Also, shout out to Terrace Spaces. They have been doing great recording these for us the last couple of months. I don't have my microphone here, so recording. So I hope I'm not causing any feedback or reflect any issues. Mike Carson, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you sound good.
All
What
right,
about
great,
me?
great. But yeah, thanks for Terra Spaces. I really appreciate you recording these. They do accept donations, and when they tweet it out, I'll share that. Also, another quick announcement: Hey.tx, our buddy Noel in Austin, he can't make it, so he wanted me to. He gave me a lot of stuff to read off. I'm going to try my best, so I don't forget. He's running a competition on the .tx domain TLD. So he says, Hey, TX is planning on doing a 30 sites in 30 days initiative to encourage building with .tx domains. It will start this weekend. Any .tx site shared with HeyTX counts as an entry and will be highlighting one site a day. In mid-November, we'll announce 3 winners. Here are the rewards. First place, 10,000 HNS. Second place, 4,000 HNS. Third place, 1,000 HNS. Winners will be chosen at HeyTX's discretion. Bonus points for creativeness with .tx domain and content. And 2, using decentralized storage and or hosting. And 3, stickiness. So check out hey.tx for more info. I'm not associated with this. I'm just spreading the word, but it's really cool. I mean, I think we all appreciate what Noel and the .tx team has been doing consistently offline and online. So definitely thank you, Noel, for that opportunity for the community. So we have quite a few things to cover, and we're going to try to bring some. Of course, we encourage anybody, if you want to, request to be a speaker in advance, we can get this to be more formal. But my rough list, and Mike, you can tell me if you have something you want to add. I don't know what the exact order yet, but of course, tokenomics, there's some people like Evan, I think he's willing to come up and share his proposal of maybe changing some of the tokenomics in HNS. A lot of people are concerned about not just the price, not just their quote unquote bags, but also the security of the chain. There's been some critics. One of our top critics is Brantley.eth at ENS Domains saying, is the chain dead now? It's the price and the size and da. So there are reasons besides just pumping our bags, as they call it in crypto, to try to address the way the coin has been going. So hopefully, Evan, if you want to, I think you're here. I'd love to hear from Evan with his proposal and others. So that's one thing on the list. The other is there's been a couple different polls. We try to run a poll at the Sky Include Twitter account to see what people want to hear about. The top pick was the potential of SLD sales. People seem to be interested in SLDs or normal, I guess, domains. Also, of course, I or Mike, I don't represent Namebase, but of course, it's been very unfortunate with the Namebase issues. We can talk about it if people want to vent about it. I know that's an issue. Integrations in general. I was on a call yesterday with Opera Browser with about 8 other people. We can talk about Opera Browser, Brave Browser. I know some people were critical on my tweets to Brendan. We could talk about that. And then just maybe addressing all these new namespaces popping up. Decentralweb, I did a recent YouTube video about. There's even newer ones just in the last 12 hours. People have been going crazy on Twitter, on the HNS community about free name. And, of course, we're all emotion. Nobody likes naming collisions and confusion in the market. So we can talk about that. I think that's my list. Mike, do you have anything you want to add to the agenda?
No, I think that sounds good.
Okay. Evan, I see you here, so I'm going to just invite you up. I don't know if you want to start this off with your proposal. I don't know if that's too urgent right off the bat, but while I wait, we could just. I sent you an invite, Evan, if you're seeing that.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Evan. Yeah, I hear you.
Great. This is my first Twitter Spaces. This is pretty cool.
My pleasure, man. It's great to have you. I mean, I've seen you in the community over, you've been involved maybe even before me, honestly. And yeah, I appreciate your contributions and your concerns. So,
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, so my goal with bringing stuff up about the coin price and the economics and stuff like that, really just to raise awareness. Like, I'm not under any spell that like I have like a great idea or even like the best idea. I'm sure there are better ideas. I was just trying to identify a few possible like things to get the conversation going. So I mentioned some stuff around adding a burn to the protocol. Mike's mentioned that as well. And kind of tweaking some of the parameters, some of the chain parameters that have existed from the beginning. The main one that I've been talking about recently is the limit on renews. And the motivation behind this is really just, well, to be honest, it's the token price. And from where I sit, my perspective on it is that it's done a really poor job at capturing value. I think that, and that's like, and actually that's a big problem, because the security of the network rests on that. And if all of the value flows to the names and none of the value flows to the token, that kind of threatens the project as a whole. It threatens the way that potential integrators view the project. They might view it as risky, and so that's a huge problem. And yeah, I already mentioned just like this, the fact that it's the lower the network value goes, the more exposed it is, I guess, as a whole to potential issues. So, and I'm definitely not like an expert on proof of work mechanics or anything like that. But yeah, that's I guess at a high level, that's kind of how I view things.
okay. Thanks, Evan, for bringing that up. I noticed there is a Discord. We encourage everybody to join I think you've been mostly discussing this in Discord. I've seen you in Telegram telling people to join the Discord. What's the best? Of course, we'll try to address it now. Mike Carson, I don't know if you have some input too on that, but we also encourage anyone here to raise their hand or request to speak. We want to kind of have some discussion here. It's a decentralized community. I mean, there's the good and the bad of decentralized community, but basically what Evan's trying to say is he's concerned about the security network and the price and the incentives. So I'm also not an expert here. I'm just learning too the last couple of years. But what I think you're trying to say is limiting the amount of renewals to then make it more expensive to renew, right? That would probably increase the price or the demand or the mining fee, right? Basically make it more expensive to that 2-year renewal.
Well,
So then
so
that would.
the proposal you're talking about, the one that I tweeted out this morning, is to tweak the renew limit. Yeah, per block renew limit. And so, there might be like some really complicated prior art on like why 600 was chosen. But I think the reality is that it's probably a mix of a technical and economic decision. So there's probably technical reasons for, like how many total names we want active at any given time. But it's also an economic reason because, that's sort of like, it's sort of like a tax. When you exceed that limit, there's sort of like an effective, like regressive tax on the whole like naming system. So by tweaking that number, you can like change the economics pretty dramatically. So yeah, I guess that's what I'll say to that.
Okay, thanks, Evan. Mike, if you have some, I see Morbius just came up too, but Mike, do you want to give us some insights or your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Evan, his proposal is really good. I mean, I definitely think we should do something. I mean, because the price, I mean, it's a supply and demand thing, and the price, I mean, it's just HNS is getting sold like crazy. I mean, somebody probably, I mean, it seems to me miners have a lot of HNS and they're selling it like crazy, more than people want to buy it. And like Evan said, there's just not a demand to buy HNS. Like, why do you want to buy HNS? I mean, except for speculation. But yeah, if you tied it to renewing names, if you dropped that limit and made like a fee market so that you needed HNS to renew, I think that is a nice solution because it's kind of simple. I mean, as far as I know, I think it's a simple code change, soft fork, and it solves. I mean, it seems that it may, and I'm not an expert either, but it may help the supply and demand issue. The price could go up, the security of the network. Also, it could help the domain squatting issues, like when it's free to register names, and it's basically free to register and free to renew. It's like you just squat everything. You just get everything possible. And I think that's the problem that happened with Namecoin. And I think Handshake did a good job of rolling out names over a year and stuff like that. But there's still an issue, like it's basically free to renew. So I think it would help that issue too. So to me, it seems like a good idea. I think it's something,
I mean, I'm just happy to have a discussion. I think we're all learning how to work as in a decentralized kind of community with there's no like, I know somebody's already talking in Twitter. I'm trying to pin here. I'm still learning Twitter Spaces. I do this just once a month here, but I pinned Evan's proposal and tweet. I don't know if people can see that, but anybody can do this. That's the beauty. I think a lot of people don't know that anybody can do this, but Evan has a proposal. We can review it. I think Matt Zipkin, I don't know if he's here today, but Matt Zipkin suggested he posted this in Hub. I think that's where they were trying to put these kind of proposals. But maybe at the beginning you could talk about it on Twitter or Discord, etc. But maybe if it gets enough interest, it can move to the GitHub. I think that's where we try to measure, I guess, a vote system. But
By
just
the
so
way,
people can see what's happening.
the idea of Evan, I think it's a great idea, but I had a similar idea a few months ago, not because of the economics, but I think some of the registrations are so silly, and they are the direct result of, as Mike also mentioned, the registration fees are so low that I think it really just encourages people to register so many absurd and like objectively silly things. And I don't mean like fun things, but really like objectively they make no sense to register. So I think if we just meaningfully adapt some of the fees, we could, people would be forced to only keep names they actually are interested in building or selling, but not like we have really a spam issue, and this spam issue is the direct result of I think wrong economics. Yeah, so I agree with Mike and I agree with Evan.
All right, thank you, Morbius. I think there's been some tweets like Paul Webb put out, or NewNet put out, like we should maybe ask the founders such as JJ Andrew Lee about why 600 was the limit. I mean, that's a good point. Maybe we can understand the logic of why. So, I see some more requests. I'm going to invite more people up, and if you can help me out and invite them.
Just to speak on what Morbius mentioned, I don't think people registering silly names is necessarily a problem. I mean, you see this in the .com space. There are tons of domains that are just nonsense, but if people want to waste their money, that's great, I guess.
But they don't waste their money, and that's the problem, because the registration is basically zero, and that's the problem.
Oh yeah, they're not necessarily going to get competition for that. Well,
That's the problem. That's the direct result of like the bad economics. In a sense, they encourage this nonsensical registrations.
I have a question with regard to that, if I may, if you were done. Question: when you were talking about spam, were you talking about with regard to staking or with regard to registering the name in general?
No, I meant generally a name like XX7700LMMX.
Is it? I can't hear.
Yeah, Morbius, you're not as clear as before. I don't know what changed on your side. I think we heard you clearly, but your latest response is a little muffled. Yeah, it does sound stronger, but there's still a little bit of a background wavy noise.
No, I was. Moment.
Yeah.
Now?
Yes, we can.
Now we hear you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I mean the registrations, because I think some registrations are a direct result of bad economics. So like names like XX70073335, like something like that, will never get any competition, and those registrations, they are basically zero fee. So yeah, I think if we adapt and change and improve the economics, this will naturally vanish.
Well,
I mean,
so my question
just VJ, if I could just clarify really quickly about the technical, there is a little. I know it looks like zero, but there are mining fees being done to get even those quote unquote free. There are mining fees. I know it's very insignificant, especially at the price agent has, but it's not 100% zero. I mean, they might win it for no burn, but they are doing mining fees for opening and other transactions, and then they also have to renew it every 2 years. So like Evan's proposal would make it more expensive for them to renew 2 years later. So just to kind of make sure there's a little bit of clarification on the free.
Zero.
Go ahead, Morbius. And then VJ, sorry, I just want to clarify that.
Okay, well, so my question would be, I don't really understand how that matters. Say, for instance, okay, it prevents them from registering it, and it didn't register, and nobody ever registered it at all. It is irritating to see it. Like, I don't want to see that. I kind of consider some of that spam too, and I question like the rationale of why people registered, certain names. But like Mike was just explaining, there is a little bit of benefit because of the mining fees and all that, as opposed to if nobody registered it ever at all. But my question would be, how does that overall, I don't understand how it negatively necessarily affects the overall community or even growth of HSN. And for me, one of the things that was attractive about it, and I think what drew a lot of people to it, was that because of the registration fees or lack thereof in terms of renewing every year. And that's why I thought it was going to be a breakout success, as opposed to ICANN or whatever, and going with the whole narrative about why rent a domain when you can own one. If now all of a sudden there's going to be more fees, higher fees attached, and that grows, and that narrative kind of goes out of the window. And also for me, in terms of .coms or traditional domains, almost everything good is taken anyway, and somebody's sitting on it anyway. And so there's not, I don't think, a really big difference in terms of somebody holding, a Handshake domain. It's kind of the same thing, except for that because it's hopefully the newest thing as we move to a decentralized web, that they will move faster and have more activity because there'll be more demand for these domains. Yeah, I don't know. That's just Kind of how I think about it.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, I
you
think
raised. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna say. I mean, it's a distribution problem. Like, I think this is what caused Namecoin. I mean, I think it's one of the big problems of Namecoin is it's like if you're one of the first 100 people, in the project, and you can just register, 5 million names for nothing, and then you have them forever basically because you can renew them for almost nothing. Then it's a distribution problem because if somebody wants to build a cool thing on Handshake or wants to try it out, they're gonna, they're not gonna be able to get a cool name or something like that. And I know the problem exists on .com now, but .com is established, and Handshake's not. And like we need people to build on Handshake, and if they go to Handshake looking to build and there's no names available, then that's a problem. So,
well, there's a difference between squatting on names in the .com realm, because you're squatting on one name. When you squat on a TLD, that locks up every possible name that can come from that TLD. And if it's a desirable name that's being squatted on, then that eliminates the possibility of anything worthwhile being built on that name. And that's where a big portion of the problem comes in, because if a person is squatting on names that have that type of value or have that type of potential, then it really gridlocks a lot of the developmental potential for the project itself.
In addition to that, first of all, thanks to the lady with the great questions. I think my main, first of all, I don't like the I don't want to slander anyone as squatter. I don't like the term. I think it doesn't make sense. It's just you buy something because you think it has value. That's fine. Do you. But for me, it's a matter of semantics. Namely, if we raise the fees to a meaningful amount, people are forced to make a judgment. They have to decide, is this registration of mine worth the fee? So if it has zero fees or any meaningful fees, they are just hoarding complete nonsense, spamming the chain, wasting space, wasting time. So I think if we just evaluate if the economics make sense, then and we make the appropriate changes, I think it's not only better for the chain, but also it improves the behavior of participants in the marketplace. So yeah, but I don't want to raise the fees to an amount which is like absurd. It should just be meaningful. So that's my proposal.
Yes, that's part I agree. It's like the moment if someone would like to create one TLD and they put to the auction, it should cost something. At least it should cost a couple. Like that's like just as you had mentioned, it's gonna people are gonna judge based on that. So they're gonna pay more attention on that. The second opinion that I have is right now, like I see a lot of domain that's been created, but the community we don't like a lot of people they don't build the like a website based on there's a domain that they have. So I think is if we can involve somehow, we can involve and build a lot, some major website based on that. I think that's good. Could give a good impact on it. Yeah.
Yeah, these are some great points. There's also some new people up, or people haven't spoken yet, like Fistful. I don't. It's great to have you here again. Do you have anything you want to add here?
Also, maybe Michael Seiger could also make a few comments. He's an expert in domains, and maybe he has a few.
It would be nice, and Michael is here in the audience. He's definitely attending these regularly, and we all appreciate that. He's welcome to come up. Like I think in the past I've invited him. I think he's maybe just a spectator, but he's welcome to come up.
Hey guys, been away for a while, but it's good to be back. This proposal is pretty new to me, and I'll definitely have to read it over more after this Twitter Spaces and everything. But I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with people trying to get silly names or whatever. People are free to get whatever name they want. And, even if they, that, and when it comes time for a renewal, they may not even want to renew it because it's just some silly random name that they got. And maybe they thought they were going to use it or something like that. And they just didn't end up doing it. So it could be something like that. But with like the tokenomics, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I honestly think that we're just in a general crypto bear market. I mean, and that's why the price of the coin is going down. I mean, it's not unusual for something as kind of fringe as HNS to go down something like 80%. Like you hear a lot of from other crypto people, like that was totally normal with other coins, and it's nothing out of the ordinary. And I talked to Steven a little bit about making changes to the chain, and this came up again when we were talking about the Alexa names and stuff like that, and if we wanted to extend that time that they had to claim those names. And I don't know, I think we should just kind of almost just let it be and just kind of see how it goes naturally without kind of any intervention. Just because HNS is still so new, we've still yet to see a lot of interactions that can happen with the chain. But then again, I still have to read over Evan's proposal and really see what it's about before I can really make a very clear and concise statement. So that's just my 2 cents about it.
Are you implying that the value of the names and the value of the names in general and how they're acquired and who's holding them has no direct bearing on the price of the coin at this point? Just so that
Yes. So from what I can see is the price of the coin is not really on the exchange of the TLD or SLD. It's more because the coin itself is not available in some of the exchange like Coinbase. It's very hard to get the HNS. It's very hard. Like for me, if I want to get HNS, I have to go bypass like a couple of exchange enable to get it. So if somehow like the HNS it's going to exist in some other exchange, I think it's going to improve a lot of the price.
Okay, Evan's got his hand raised up. I mean, there's lots of great insights here. I just want to add one other thing. I know a lot of you know we do these auctions, the Flamingo Handshake. We are changing the policy. We used to allow 100% non-HNS, but we're requiring at least on these big names only. We didn't do it on not big sales, but on the new policy is 100,000 HNS minimum in HNS, and then additional could be in Bitcoin or ETH. Just wanted to make that announcement again. But Evan, you have your hand raised up.
Yeah. So there's taking my proposal as an example, taking the renew limit down from 600 to 200, there's like a lot of different angles that you can look at that from. So like one thing was mentioned where Handshake isn't on any exchanges, and having worked at an exchange or I work in an exchange, so I know that the major factor when an exchange is considering spending the development, marketing, and legal efforts on listing something is what's the payoff. And just the fact that you don't need the token for anything at this point. I have lots of valuable names that I frankly would spend a lot of money to renew. But that is just uncaptured value, right? It's basically I'm freeloading on the protocol. And because I have no real reason to buy Handshake, it's reflected in the fact that there's no the trading volume is super low. So it's sort of just this self-fulfilling prophecy, where the economics reflect in all these different ways, and the lack of exchange support is one of them. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. There's lots of different angles to look at it, but that's just one.
I think that's exactly also what I was referring to when I meant changing the semantics and forcing people to make judgments. Namely, people really have to think about what is valuable to me. And when we really increase the fees, we are not only improving the integrity of the chain, making it more sustainable, more secure, and those are important aspects I think we have to think about. And yeah, so
Yeah. I think I want to add 2 points, or 3 points. Nathan.Woodburn on Twitter is listening, and he's welcome to share, but he's saying mining fees have been getting more expensive. I don't, he's not providing more data than that, but that is one point. A second point, actually, Evan, if you need me to help, maybe we could try to reach out to the founders. Maybe we could get their feedback about your proposal or their reasoning of why they chose 600 and maybe add that to the proposal. And then the third point I think I would like to see in a proposal is what's the predicted impact of the cost of renewal in that case. Because, like VJ said, and a lot here, we sign up for one thing and to change it later obviously causes some confusion or different reactions from people, right? So I don't know if those are some points that you would like to try to add to the proposal, because I'm also not sure what it exactly would do to the way things work.
I just wanted to add another thing, namely, think about the scenario where a trader, he goes into Namebase, buys a valuable name, and then he, I don't know, loses or I don't know, loses interest or whatever, and because he has like 10 or 20 HNS, very low amount of HNS on his account, his names are automatically renewed, and we as the people who are interested in building on those names or buying those names lose access to those names because this person maybe he had a special email for this account, and he doesn't care about this account anymore. And effectively now, because we have no meaningful fees, this account automatically renews all those valuable names automatically for him. He doesn't know about them. He doesn't care, or he or she, and we lose access to those valuable names. So if we just minimally, really to a meaningful amount, increase the fees, just not so much that people consider it like annoying or harmful or whatever, but really just a meaningful amount, so that for instance, let's say the person has the domain, I don't know, whatever, and this domain, let's say he has 10 domains, and if just the renewal would cost 1 HNS, after 1 year or after the renewal period, his account would diminish by this value. And if he doesn't buy any more HNS and he is not interested in buying more HNS, he automatically loses those domains, and those domains are released, and we have access to them. So it's a win-win for the ecosystem. It's a win for everybody who is interested in buying those domains. So I think we really need to stress this aspect more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just concerned, we want this to be international. I mean, not every, I guess, of course, 1 HNS doesn't sound like a lot now. We hope it becomes somewhat significant in the future, though. But, I just want to make sure we welcome everybody around the world, with different income levels and things to be able to afford
Definitely.
this. I think that's one.
I get exactly where you're coming from, Mike. However, at this point in time, there are no firm metrics on who owns how many names in comparison to how much HNS they have. So you end up, say for instance, a proposal is passed and there is an increase in the renewal price and so on and so forth, right? We still don't know, and I'm not saying that we should, but this is something to consider. We still don't know who owns which names and how many names they own, let alone how much HNS they have. So what happens is that even if you do raise the fees, and which is a common sense approach, you could still be in the same position because a core group of individuals might own a substantial number of names. And now you don't get that effect that you thought you would get from raising the fees and so on and so forth. So that's why it's really important to consider. I think it was, Morbius who was saying that he didn't believe that it should be called squatting. Well, I'm pretty sure that Mr. Seiger can, attest to this. There's the squatting and then there's the hoarding. And then when you look at HNS and how you have the automatic renewals, it's safe to say that you're going to have a systemic hoarding, right? And you can have a systemic squatting as well, whether someone is intentionally looking to do that after a certain point or not, because the way that the system is structured is the moment that you accumulate a certain amount of H&S and you accumulate a certain amount of names, the system can benefit you from that point on without you really having to do much more beyond that point, which is claiming the name and accumulating the H&S. So the proposal does make sense. It does make sense to have some type of mechanism in place to tackle that, but there also needs to be something in place to tackle the value of the names themselves, because right now, one thing that you hear floating throughout Twitter is how many names have been registered on H&S, and that number continues to accumulate. It continues to mount. And at some point in time, we have to step back and say, okay, well, there are 7 million names registered. What happens? What is the impact if it reaches 10 million names? Like, so it seems like the more names that are registered and the more that these issues are discussed and they're not tackled head on, we're pushing any possible solution further out to sea, because meanwhile, you have all of these different names that are, and this is not even to mention the issues that are going on with name base and the registering of the names, the H&S brand, what the current owners are doing with their names. And with him launching the 30 websites in 30 days with over 6 million TLDs, and this is no offense to Noel, because that's a great initiative, but just with there being so many, I can't say that it's so many owners because we don't know how many there are. So little do we know, there could be 500 owners just about, and this is just mere speculation, so please don't jump down our backs over this. We're just hypothetically saying that there could be 500 owners and there's 6 million names spread it out amongst those 500 owners. So we have to look at things like that, because H&S does have a level of appeal. But as more namespaces are coming into the fray of things, it's starting to cast a light on what H&S should have done, still can do, didn't do, and might suffer the consequences of. And we have to address certain things simultaneously. So yes, the proposal, Evan, you get the thumbs up for that, because that proposal needed to come about. Like, we do need to talk about the tokenomics. We hear it all of the time. This is early Bitcoin days and so on and so forth. Namer Tip said it in the Telegram. Are we saying that, are we using this as a justification, or are we saying that this is this is like the early days of Bitcoin just because H&S is a fork of Bitcoin? This is an entirely different climate than when Bitcoin started. And because this has to do with names and digital identity, there's a lot of things that H&S, a lot of hurdles that it's going to have to get over on its own, regardless of it's being an extension of BTC. And so with that being said, I just want to encourage everyone to keep that in mind, because everything kind of rolls back to that. Well, remember, these are the early days. Remember what happened to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has its particular path that it's on. H&S has its particular path that it's on. And if we keep that in mind, I think that we can come up with more compartmentalized solutions to address the issues rather than, putting a blanket over everything.
Yeah, thank you, Namer Tips. Always appreciate your insights here. It's definitely not like Bitcoin was before, right? I mean, I know there's been discussions to get these on various other exchanges. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to speak about any of this, but I've heard, like Evan says, they want trading volume, and it's not like the Bitcoin days where they can get coins can get listed for free. There are these centralized blockchain companies that have teams and funding that give a lot of coin or money or token to these exchanges to get listed, etc. So yeah, it's a different world now. But that's why that's why I like Handshake, is because it is this decentralized. But of course, it makes it more challenging. It's not like the Bitcoin early days. It's true. I see AOX here and some others coming up. I'd love to hear your insights if you're willing or able.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'll say at Namebase, we're going to implement a renewal fee. I'm not sure exactly what that will look like, but basically similar to the service fee any registrar would charge. So I'm glad to hear people like basically asking for it, because I think it's pretty well understood. It's good. It's a good thing, especially if it's in HNS. Gives people a reason to buy HNS, spend it on renewals, and the 7 million might shrink to 3 million in 2 years. We'll see. And that's I'll say my disclaimer that everything following is not my employer's necessarily public opinion. The two knobs that I would turn as far as the tokenomics or the chain itself would be a yearly renewal. I tend to agree with Zipkin that it's hard to just say like, let's put it at 1 HNS, because if we could have a stable price that was like $5 or $1, that would be one thing, but it's just hard to know what 1 HNS will be. So making you renew every year doubles the amount of renew transactions. And then I agree with limiting the number of renews and the total number of domains. I think there's a limit to the number of actually valuable TLDs. I mean, if you looked at like .net, .org, they have 10 million SLDs, and there's only 1,500, 2,000 TLDs. Not a lot of them get used. I would say you should make it so that like it's hard capped, so it won't drop less. It allows 1 million TLDs, but like it starts to get expensive after that. But I would do something like that. Like I think 1 million TLDs is probably enough. Then you would have a real nice competitive fee market to keep those TLDs, and the best TLDs would get built on, and they would have a lot more demand. So, and not everyone wants to hear that they might have to pay a lot for if they have squatted or collected thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of TLDs. But if the end result is that the most valuable ones, or all of the names become more valuable that are on the chain, I think that's good. The third thing that I personally think is a huge lever is the 48-hour transfer time. And it's been said that it was designed as a safety measure. Like if your domain is being stolen, you have 48 hours, you can cancel, and then you're like in a standoff with the stealer. But to me, that 48 hours has really just kneecapped any competition to Namebase. You can't make a decentralized competitor because you can't offer the same instant gratification and user experience that a centralized exchange can. So if it was dropped down to like an hour or 2 hours, that would be enough, I think, for the most valuable TLD would know that their TLD is getting transferred or their key was stolen or whatever, and then everyone else gets to buy and sell and not have to go away from the computer and come back 2 days later. So to me, it's just like we're all adults. I think like an hour or 2 hours would be plenty. I mean, instant would be great.
It's 48 hours now. It might be, and this is just a recommendation. It might be ideal to institute 24 hours, considering that, certain holders are on different time zones. I mean, I think that would be a courtesy worth, putting in place. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the idea is a really valuable TLD, like whatever, CNN is stolen, it's hacked, then you have some measure to like stop that. And I think if you have that valuable TLD, you can watch the chain, or you might know that your wallet is hacked other ways. But like as soon as the transfer hits, you cancel the transfer. I mean, I think any like big operations team could put that in place, just like they do with red domains now. There's DNS monitors and everything. So I think like 1 to 2 hours is plenty of time. But yeah, that would allow, and I should, maybe you think I shouldn't say this, but I think it would be best for Handshake. That would allow a decentralized exchange to offer a much more liquid and attractive market. I think.
I guess maybe I was just asking about the 24-hour window with regard to the owners, because you made a good point about there being teams in place for, that oversee a lot of the operations for, TLDs and domains and so on and so forth. But the Handshake ecosystem consists of individuals who have that business foundation or have that type of infrastructure. But then there are also other individuals who, for them, this is all new terrain. So not only are they learning the domain space, but they're also learning how to go about putting those particular protocols in place and so on and so forth. And that was kind of like why I was recommending the 24 hours, because it's 48 now. So, if you cut it in half, at least for some period of time, to give them room to adjust, or else it just turns into a situation where it's like those who already have those infrastructures in place stand to benefit the most. And then that sets a range of dominoes in falling order that we don't want to deal with.
Well, so like if you look at NFTs, people get hacked all the time, but there's other ways you can prevent that. Like if you have valuable TLDs, you could have them in a multi-sig, you could have them in a time-locked script. You could put in security that prevents them being hacked. But what the 48 hours really does is it's like the insider name base rule in my mind, because it makes it so that a decentralized exchange has a huge disadvantage. That you can't just swap immediately. Everything's extra slow. So
with name base, do you think that name base? No, go ahead. I'm listening.
You can add extra security for TLDs so they don't get hacked, but you can't make things faster. And I think that's why like ShakeDex struggles. I mean, you can't offer the same liquid market that like an OpenSea.
So if Namebase, institutes such a change, of course you don't speak for Namebase, but just based on your experience being over there, do you believe that they'll put some type of resources in place for or to educate TLD owners who may not be privy to some of the things that they can do to protect their TLDs and their wallets? Will they like launch a campaign or something like that in tandem with adjusting the transfer out time?
Well, we wouldn't. It's not the transfer out time is on chain. It's a 48-hour transfer time. So it would be a hard fork. It's a big change, so nobody wants to do it. But it's not a name-based policy. But what I would hope is that, all of the ecosystem outside of name-based would grow. So you would have, instead of like 90% of domains on name-based, maybe 50%. And you have ShakeDex growing, and you have more wallets, and you have multi-sig on Bob, and all of that gets a lot more attention when people are using it more often. And a lot of that is just improving the user experience using those tools.
Speaking of AOX, I think personally it's a numbers game here, what we're talking about in terms of trying to stop the squatting or the hoarding. And the first thing that we could do as a community is get those names off of Namebase. And the easiest way to do that is just if Namebase said, well, every user should have their own wallet, and you guys implement technology so that they can use their own wallet. That's all I have to say.
I think what AOX is saying is they can't really do that easily, even if they wanted to, because the 48-hour transfer rule. So to sell names to other users, like in ShakeDex, it's a 48-hour wait on the protocol level. So the point he's saying is Namebase has an advantage because they're already there.
But what I'm getting at is that's the way it works. Why should a centralized institution come in and change it? They should adapt to the way that the protocol works, so that could be the way that everything else works. But instead, we're seeing something completely different. But obviously, it is a big change. It's going to require a ton of infrastructure change, probably a shit ton of money. But I think it's worth it in the long run, rather than trying to play with the economics and hard fork and soft fork. So,
So
I have a question.
I mean, if Namebase had
Maybe-
individual like hosted wallets, it really all it would do, it wouldn't do anything really. Like if we have the keys for all of you.
no,
it just
that's
makes
not
it
what
so that you
that's
can't.
not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I want to be able to link my wallet that I have custody of to Namebase so that I can interact with your market.
Yeah, I agree. Like decentralized exchange, you connect and you sell your domains from your wallet.
Yes.
So,
but the thing is that ShakeDex is struggling because of the fact that your business model exists. That's why they're struggling.
I think
So
maybe tone it down a little. Your tone is a little strong, I think. So if you don't mind.
Fair enough. It's just I'm trying to make the case in point here. There's things that we can do right now without having to soft fork or hard fork, and we should be putting attention towards those things.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
things.
BJ.
Okay, a couple things. One, I'm not totally sure I understand the real difference and what effect it has on the whole tokenomics of everything. If one person owns 10,000 domains versus 10 people owning 1,000 versus one person or versus 10,000 owning one. I think that, of course, if there's 10,000 that own one, they're probably buying something that they want to build on. And for the people who have lots of domains, I think they want to sell them for the most part, not necessarily hoard them. Especially right now, I've been excited about the activity that I've seen in terms of sales. And it seems like to me that, that adoption is starting to happen and people are coming in and being more interested. And for me, again, some of the things that originally drew me to this project, it seems like now that you all are talking about changing, and to me, it's almost like false advertising. And also, isn't it's supposed to be community governed and about decentralization as opposed to more and more regulation. And so a lot of what I'm hearing.
Just to clarify what the proposal, I mean, it is decentralized. I mean, there's proposals made on decentralized blockchains. I'm even not qualified enough to even maybe educate because I'm also more of a student, but it's not, this discussion is not like, there's no decision being made on this Twitter space or on Evan's tweets or putting it on GitHub. But it's healthy to have conversations about these, but yeah, it's meant to be consensus approved. There's no decisions being made today.
But you just said the key word. You just said the key word, consensus and the standard. That you just made a very good point about the community dynamic. That's where the issue is coming in, because there's no formal standard for how do we deal with this many names in circulation and what people are doing with them at one point in time. And because the token is marketed as being relative to the names themselves, regardless of how it's looked at in terms of, the tokenomics do this and you burn this, H&S, when advertised, it is advertised as H&S names, H&S coins. If they are two separate things, then moving forward, they shouldn't even be, in our viewpoint, they shouldn't even be discussed in the same sentence, because it creates a level of confusion, because people are under the impression that, okay, these are H&S names, this is the H&S coin, they're relative.
Well, that is how I see it too. And to me, it just kind of like follows logic that you would view it that way. And so, and that's why I'm really asking a question. I'm trying to understand like what the tokenomics are, because for me, it seems like if the value of the names go up, then so does the value of the token. I remember when I first, got into it, it was almost 80 cents. And then, of course, the whole crypto market crashed and we are where we are now. But I do, like I said, I've been excited about the activity that I've seen. And I would assume that, when things get back to normal and we get out of this bear market, that it will rise, based on excitement around the names and around the project in general.
Well, one thing, I mean,
Mike, go ahead, Mike.
If I could just say one thing, I mean, clearly right now, even though we're in a bear market, names are selling for like some names like .s sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. .e or whatever, I forget which one it was.
Who was .s purchased by? Wasn't it purchased by Namecheap?
Yeah, but there was a second bidder who bid hundreds of thousands also, and so the point I'm trying to make is just that even in this bear market, names are really valuable, but the coin is going down. And the whole point of this discussion is like concern about how the coin is not tied to the value of the names or of the network. And it's causing a security problem to the blockchain because hash rate is going down. Miners are losing interest because the price of the coin is going down. And so what Evan's talking about proposing is like we're concerned about this and we think maybe something should be done about it to make those more aligned, so that when names are selling for a lot, the coin should go up also, or like the price of the coin, and that would add security.
So if I wanted to add a little bit of context or a story, so I did a promo with Goldshell Miner. It's basically the only my official miner of Handshake. And, full disclosure, they gave me a free HS miner when I was in China and mailed it to me there in China. Came in a couple of days. I left it in China with my friend, and I'm trying to get him involved in the Handshake a bit. He's not really as involved. And it's been running. It has been running since maybe August. It's using his electricity bill, and I told him I'd split it. I'd split it with him. And he pulled the plug last week because it's making less than the electricity. So he doesn't really know about Handshake. He just wants to make some money mining, but he's not running a miner anymore because it's not profitable for electricity costs. So I just want people here to understand that thought. Again, I don't like changing things either. I know even some people said false advertising. There's nothing decision being made now, but you also have the other side of Brantley.eth talking about our project being dead because of the price. And you have Decentralweb saying that, we're running TLDs on an unsecure, et cetera. There's like more and more of these haters, and there's more and more of these competing blockchain naming solutions coming out like everywhere, like free names, and they're all going to start picking on us for these reasons.
Michael, I think what we should emphasize is, to those people who are afraid that, the price changes might, negatively affect them, we have to think about the blockchain is like a garden, and you will have no fruits or no vegetables, no yield if the integrity of the chain is compromised by bad economics. So we want the best for the ecosystem. We want the best for you all, for your assets. So we have no interest in making life difficult for people. We want to make life better for you. So that's for everybody. So to those people who are afraid of these changes, I think if you have assets where you think they're very valuable to you, I think like demanding like I don't know, like 10 cents or 20 cents for a name that you think is very valuable, that shouldn't be too much to ask.
I agree with that. And again, I was genuinely asking in search of answers and understanding it all. And I appreciate the insight. After that round, I do think I understand a little better. What was confusing me is that not necessarily the price or having to pay. One, it was more about, the conversation about who owned what, and we don't know who owns what or how much somebody owns or whatever. I'm not necessarily concerned with what somebody else owns.
Yeah, so some people think I think it's a feature. Ethereum people like the full transparency of your ETH address and your wallet address being completely public and seeing every transaction and asset and currency you own. But I think Handshake's based more on a Bitcoin model
No,
of
no, no.
privacy.
That
So,
wasn't what was being implied. The point that was being made with regard to that is that it's hard to pinpoint what the impact of any numerical adjustments to anything would be when you don't know what the core numbers are. I wasn't referencing that we
okay,
need.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I hope I'm not saying like come
No,
at
no,
you
no, no.
either. But
I think that Veta may have potentially. Forgive me if this is not the case, Veta.
no
But
problem.
I think that
Evan's got his
maybe.
hand. Oh, sorry.
Okay, well,
Gamer tips. There's a
well, no,
lot.
I'm just going to say this and wrap this up.
Yeah, I think I'll
If
drop it too. But there are differences in these chains and different features and things. But okay, Evan, I know you have your hand up. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, just want to mention two things. The proposal that I tweeted out really just accelerates something like a design that's already in place. So this dynamic we're talking about where fee market competition increases and people pay more to renew would have happened anyway. But at the rate we're going, it's going to take a really long time. We're at 7 million names 2 years in, and we're talking about a dynamic that kicks in at 66 million names. So, like, in my view, like the economic reality of the situation just, I think, dictates a change. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that renewal fee increases don't necessarily have a positive impact on price. Like, I think that there will be like a roughly equal amount of bids and asks on exchange order books, like bids from people who are buying to renew, and then and sells from miners who are trying to offload their coin. The positive impact, like the positive price appreciation, I think would, if the number was significantly low enough, would come from valuable names that expire and then go up for reauction, and then there's more burn. There's other ideas that people are talking about, just introducing like a burn by itself.
I see Swearworks raising his hand. I guess that's a helpful way for us to. There's about 8 or 9 speakers. So Swearworks, do you want to have something to say?
This may be a naive point, but I'm just curious if there's a way for renewal fees to somehow be tied to the value, quote unquote, of the name. Meaning, let everybody that has these very unvaluable names just renew very cheaply or almost for free. And if there's some sort of a tier system or some way to measure, super valuable names have higher renewal fees, or some way of somehow doing that would be helpful, because you don't want to screw over all the little guys that have little tiny names to pay high renewal fees, but you want to charge the guys that are squatting more or something.
I mean, it does sound nice, but to change any of this is going to be, any of these discussions are like hard forks, which is very serious and involved. So, I mean, that does sound nice, but it would be a pretty big rework on the
just to clarify,
fundamentals.
Michael, I mean, are you saying that changing the fee across the board is not a hard fork, but changing it in a more nuanced way is? Just so I understand.
I think again, I'm not. I don't know if Mike or somebody else here can help me. I'm not. I wish that Matt Zipkin was here. But.
Yeah, I think Evan's proposal is soft fork. I think it would be a soft fork from what I understand.
Yeah, Zipkin said that lowering the number is a soft fork, but raising it is a hard fork.
Okay. Again, I'm happy there's a lot of people here interested, and we're also passionate, especially in this bear market. It does mean a lot. I feel pretty good about this. And again, the point is Twitter Space is exactly what we're doing. We're trying to just highlight things. I mean, some people are reading the Telegram groups or Discords or Twitter. We're just trying to be another way to get word out. Like I'm happy Evan came up here and shared, and people here been able to comment. Something like this would still take time to be done, and everyone here is welcome to make these kind of proposals and suggestions. And then I think the protocol is putting it into the GitHub, and then having buy-in from all stakeholders in the GitHub. Can somebody else clarify the process? I believe that I actually have one with Matt Zipkin on Sky Include called, I'm forgetting the name, but he wants more. I mean, he and everyone in the development community wants more of us. I guess a lot of us here are more the business marketing people, and call today, but the developer community also wants to have this awareness that these things are possible and can be discussed.
Matthew is maybe he can comment on it. He's here.
So I sent Matt a speaker invite, but he didn't request to come up. We don't have to require anyone to come on stage that isn't willing or able. Maybe while we wait, I think maybe we're done at this. I mean, we spent a majority of our call, hour and 15 minutes on this tokenomics, but I do think, of course, it's a pretty critical one that's even reliant on other parts of this rough agenda. But I think maybe we can move to the next topic, if that's okay for everybody. So, next, is that okay, Evan? Or you can all see Evan's tweet. I pinned it. I'm learning Twitter Spaces. I pinned a bunch on the tweet on this Twitter Space. I think people can see, there is a lot of pushback. I'm getting direct messages of some pretty OG people that are saying any changes is a disrespect to the founders and da 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 da. I'm not really on that side. I think it's okay to change. I think there's changes in Ethereum all the time. There's changes. I'm not as familiar with Bitcoin's history, but I mean, I think it's fine for there to be proposals and consensus and adapting. So I'm open for change.
I guess the focus moving forward probably needs to be a consensus on adding value to the names, because the discussion about the tokens and the tech side, the technological side of it and so on and so forth can be a continuous roundabout, but the value, there definitely, no doubt, needs to be value added to the names. And I think that it would be ideal for us to kind of look at that, especially with many in this space being holders of TLDs, considering how we could add more value. And maybe it might be runoff value that does affect the token if, that just happens to happen. But yeah, the value of the names probably needs to be a priority for us.
Me personally, I have zero interest in, any of for me, personally, the health of the chain, the health of the ecosystem, the health of, the community is the most important to me. So I have personally, if the price of the coin goes down, it's better. I have constant buy orders. I have no problem with that. But, people really need to understand that the blockchain is like a garden, and we need to make sure that the garden is healthy and is flourishing. And that's the most important thing.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I said, and people are nervous in the Telegram groups about the price. And of course, I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, this makes me nervous. But the turnout today and the feedback from everyone, and still comparing this to other naming solutions, I'm still most confident of Handshake. So maybe we move on to the integrations on my list. Again, it's tricky about what I can and cannot say. But there was a call with Opera browser recently. So I know we've all been waiting. That was publicly tweeted from Opera officially around New Year's Day, I believe. So we're kind of ending the year. And there has been integration on the Opera crypto browser side in iOS, I believe. I don't know. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't tested it too much myself. But we welcome the community to test it and give us feedback, I believe, and help share out a kind of like a Google form for people to give us feedback of how they feel about that integration. But it was, I believe it's being paid for or confirmed right now. So any kind of feedback about that integration. The one thing that we're learning is they're separating their Opera crypto browser and their Opera traditional browser. And that's one difference, I think, some of us that were involved in that negotiation. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved at the beginning, but I believe there's just some clarifications being made about Opera browser, a crypto version versus normal version. So maybe that could just be an announcement, unless somebody has a question or clarification or input.
Is there have there been any types of discussions amongst, I guess, whomever is engaging in these meetings with regard to what if there's integration with another browser, or there's the pursuit for integration with another browser, how what's going on with Opera would factor into that? Because that's a bit I guess, shocking, for lack of better words, that now you come to find out that there's two browsers, one for crypto and one for just a regular browser. And then the HNS names resolve on the crypto browser. And ironically enough, we're having a discussion about a crypto related matter.
Yeah, again, I don't know if anybody has some input here, but it's being negotiated right now.
For me, my focus was more on getting Handshake integrated into Brave browser. So I really honestly didn't care too much about Opera. So I was chatting with Brandon, and he was like, he seemed like he was interested, and we were talking, and he also mentioned that he was like looking into integrating it with the help of Matthew. So maybe I don't know. I didn't check in with Matthew. Maybe you can ask him later if they're still working on it, or what is or if there are updates or anything.
Matthew didn't accept my invite. He's still in the audience. Obviously, we all really appreciate every contribution Matt Zipkin's help with. I'll say it publicly. A lot of people saw my tweets with Brandon about a week ago. I got a little bit emotional. I mean, some people think I'm overly invested, but to me, it's not about money. I know some people thought I was trying to pump my bags by getting Brave integration. Of course, I'm invested in this, but I don't believe I'm driven by that.
I didn't. I'm out of the loop. Can you? What exactly happened?
I was catching up on some UD and Brave Brendan tweets thread, and I jumped into that thread about their discussion about decentralized browsers, integrations, and it was quite of a long thread, and I'm not exactly proud, but I'm not going to delete my tweets, and I'm not going to take back what I said. But, I was just showing my disappointment in UD. Of course, UD just paid whatever price they paid. The difference of UD from Handshake is UD has, funding from venture capitalists, and they're more centralized in the fact that you register the domains from them with a credit card to their bank account, and they use those funds for integration. So they went down the route of just paying what Brave asked for integration. Brave did. There was discussions, and again, I wasn't involved with the Brave over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, or even longer. There was various quotations for different types of integrations. And, some people call me a liar or spreading false information, but I'm pretty sure the information I got was 95% correct. But it was like a year and a half ago. So I'm still upset about that. And seeing this whole pat on the back with Brendan and the Unstoppable Domains community manager, Mago.crypto, which was also just recently tweeting very vulgar things about Handshake on his tweets as a full-time employee of Unstoppable Domains, made me upset. So I jumped in that thread and I said, various things, but I try my best to help push things along. And finally, he said, after a lot of different people jumping in, he's not going to be involved in this thread anymore on Twitter, and he'll talk to Matt to accelerate helping getting Handshake integrated into Brave. So that was about a week ago, and I don't know if Matthew's talked to Brendan since, and I know he. But I mean, that was kind of like the quick one. There was some, I was a little bit emotional. I'm not going to lie, but that's the story.
Yeah. Should I speak or should?
Yeah, go ahead.
Speak? Oh, okay. So Mike, we know you're super emotionally invested, as well as we all spent money on TODs, but I don't think anyone blames you for how you reacted in that thread last week. In terms of getting integrations, I am probably in the minority who thinks that they aren't incredibly important right now, especially in browsers, because the point of browsers is to visit websites. Handshake, we have a shit ton of names, not a lot of websites. If we had even a third of the amount of websites that we have names, then I could see it's obvious. There's a world of stuff to visit. We should have native browser integration. And also, to jump back to Brave and Unstoppable Domains, their integration is through a proxy. Like it's just a simple URL. If name ends in .crypto, do this. A simple if-else statement. That's not really integration. And it's great they paid however millions for that little 10-line script, but I mean, Handshake is a lot more involved, so it's going to take a lot more time, and that's where all the kind of Brave hoopla comes from. But just moving forward into the end of this year and the beginning of next year, I think the focus for the community should be to create more than just D-links, create more than just one-pager websites, actually create blogs on your Handshake names, create services, create reasons for people to use your service, use your site to continue installing things like fingertips so they can explore this other internet that we're still building. Because I mean, all this other talk that we've had thus far in this conversation thus far, while important, I mean, it's just like, okay, the focus of Handshake is the TODs. That is all it was designed for explicitly. So now that we have all that, it's up to us to actually build out the ecosystem.
Yeah, and one thing we'll add to Mr. Webb's point is it's important for everyone in the community to think about this from a seasonal standpoint, and everybody I think in this space can agree that the tokenomics discussion and the integration discussion, they can be taxing, and it seems like they've been prolonged. But if you think about it from a seasonal standpoint, you can look at the integration side of things as being, okay, that was the season of integration. That was what that was about. On our end, we kind of view it from the standpoint of now being the season of connecting with people. If you look at other namespaces, regardless of what you think about how they're doing it, one thing that stands out tremendously is their ability to reach people. Take the forwarding or the whatever UD is doing, whatever it's classified as, take that. Okay, we can set that to the side, but just look at they're reaching people. Like recently, they just announced that they set aside, well, we set the figure aside because, $25 million worth of domains. But the point that we're emphasizing here is that they just announced that they're allocating helping 5 million Latinas, get their decentralized identity. That was major. And with things like that happening in this decentralized namespace, it becomes ever more critical for HNS, regardless of whether it's the HNS community or the individual HNS owners. It's important right now to start connecting with people, because if you thought that tribalism in the centralized space was something, imagine when it rears its head in the decentralized space by way of, I got my first decentralized identity through Unstoppable, or I got it through DecentraWeb, or I got it through this person, or this entity or that entity. When that starts to happen, it's going to be really difficult, regardless of whether HNS is the root zone and got all these different things going on. When it comes down to it, it's about the people. And if HNS as a community and as a protocol is not appealing to the people in a scaled fashion, especially with there being 7 million TLDs, that's going to make for a really big issue down the road. And that's not me speaking FUD. That's just looking at it objectively. And it's this community narrative that, like, we're a community here. We're having this discussion, right? But there's no formal outreach. And if there's nothing else that the community needs to come together and do, it needs to come together and put together a formal outreach plan like yesterday. Needs to do it now, or else HNS, the technology is there, undoubtedly. But I'm going to say this to you. There will be someone who will take and they will launch something, and it will have HNS underpinnings, and they will say nothing about HNS, and it'll be one of the developers who's looking at the back end of it and saying, oh, this is a handshake, such and such, and so on and so forth. But regardless of what they tell other people, individuals won't lend the credit that particular project is capable of giving. They won't lend it to HNS. And we need to ensure that right now we reach out and we connect with people as a whole, because that's where I personally feel like the mark is being missed. There's 5 million TLDs. It doesn't matter, again, what you think of unstoppable, or what you think of Decentralweb. And Decentralweb is actually one namespace or project, whatever you guys would refer to it as. That's one that you probably want to keep an eye on. And that's not endorsing, but it's a narrative that's brewing there, right? And if it gets to a point where the discussion and the because right now it's about the secondary market and selling SLDs. Like, you really don't hear too many people highlighting the buying and selling of TLD. So it's kind of like exclusive to HNS, and you have other individuals or projects talking about it kind of like amongst themselves. But when you start to talk about Decentralweb is actively stating that this is where you can buy TLDs. And that's something that everyone in this space is likely aware of, or if you're not, you're aware of it now. That needs to be taken into consideration, because if Decentralweb turns around and puts Unstoppable's flair on their offering of TLDs, then coming to the table and still talking about, yeah, it's the root zone and it's this many TLDs, it's not going to resonate with people. And that's what I think Mr. Webb's point, and he may differ with me, but that's what I think his point is, connecting with people. And the talk about the integrations is fine, but if it gets integrated on Brave, the next issue that comes up is, yes, these domains will resolve, but what's to be found? There's no websites to be found. There's nothing to see. And Unstoppable is allowing people, regardless of whether you feel like the sites are sophisticated or not, you can create a site. You can visit the site. As of now, when you type in the Unstoppable domain on, I think it is Brave browser. When you type it in on Brave browser, it'll redirect to our IPFS site. And the address bar, it turns from the actual domain to a string of numbers. You probably know the technical term for that, but it turns into a string of numbers and letters. But it's a site. You can go to Brave and you can type it in and you can pull up a site. And there's someone who is actively in that community seeking a Guinness World Record to create the most decentralized websites. And dare we say ourselves, what holds more weight? The idea that you own this many TLDs, or the fact that you own this many TLDs and you've actually done something with them?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, the Brave integration with UD is what makes me throw up every time I open Brave now, because yeah, I mean, it's all about money, and that's what makes me sick about Web3. A majority of Web3 companies are centralized companies, in my opinion, that are just raising VC funds to give tokens to centralized teams that then pay Brave. I mean, probably Decentralweb's the same. They raise, so yeah, they have funds and they have a team. But I'm running this Twitter space for free, and I'm going to start doing more outreach for free, or I guess as a community member. I can make the plans public too, more public. But yeah, I mean, it's the difference of a decentralized community versus a centralized VC-funded team,
I think I personally, I couldn't care less about either of those alternative naming systems. I'm focused on, like what Mr. Webb elegantly expressed. Like, I'm building my personal project, which focuses on Twitch streamers, where people can, comment on clips and stuff. And I have my Handshake TLD. I'm integrating it, and I'm building a community around it. Like, this is my, I have a professional Twitter account, which is another one. It's not connected to this one. So yeah, I mean, Mr. Webb made a good point. Like, we are building on it, and more people should build on it. But me personally, I'm going to be honest, like, I couldn't care less about Unstoppable or whatever else of these VC grifts there are. So I'm building my project. I'm concentrating on my websites and I encourage other people to do the same. Like, build your blog, as Mr. Webb said, build your project on Handshake, and let's move on from I think discussing.
Listen, we're not saying that anyone has to care. I think maybe we're coming off, our statements are being misinterpreted. We're just referencing that these projects, again, that's why we gave a disclaimer at the beginning, regardless of what you think about them, they're reaching people. That's the thing that we're emphasizing. And that Handshake in simple terms, needs to be reaching more people. We get that everyone is actively building. That is wonderful. There's not really too many ways that you can express that someone or a team building is a phenomenal thing. When you start to talk about building in contrast to destruction, it cannot be overstated. And this, if we could reach through and hug, pat, whatever your forte is, that confirms or validates your work. If we could do that right now, we would, because we're proud of everyone. That might seem like a empty pleasantry, but we literally are proud of everyone that's building. But we're also keeping track of what's happening outside of the bubble that we're building within. So you don't have to like UD. This is not a popularity contest, although in some instances it can seem like it at times. We're just saying that there are end users who you have a generation of end users that weren't even privy to the fact, or they're not even privy to how a domain works. So they're skipping over an entire string of experiences and they're jumping straight into, this is a decentralized domain and this is what it means and you need to have one. There are people who don't even realize that a domain has any purpose outside of just being in the top of their screen on their mobile device when they're searching for a website. Like they're literally like there. So we have to just, the purpose is reaching people. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and a little bit back to the Brave discussion. He says he's not going to pick or I should say Brendan, but I guess it's Brendan, but he says he's not going to pick a winner. Other people, I don't know if it's him specifically. I think he brought up another technology that was in this maybe emerging technology. And like,
did you pin it, the one from Brendan where he says the DNS is hierarchical? Where he made he wants to integrate it. So I don't really I can't follow your point on that.
That was after the discussion. I don't want to take credit for that, but he mentioned that after the anger and emotions.
Yeah, but it seems like very good he's very supportive.
Yeah, this is really a positive development. This is that's afterwards, not before. I'm just sharing the positive. I don't want to share the negative.
Yeah, it's a positive tweet until.
Mike Carson, do you have feedback? I mean, he's also in Impervious invested a lot making the Beacon browser. I mean, others have said maybe just use Beacon or use browsers that adopt, screw the old ones. Or you have any other feedback about what we've been talking about?
I mean, yeah, I guess not much feedback except, I mean, I think our Beacon web browser works, it's the only browser that allows you to securely use Dane. So, if Brave or whatever does that, then, if they're resolving Handshake, I doubt. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not. I guess I'm just not really interested in all that. I'm not focused on that stuff right now. So yeah.
Okay, no problem. I guess we can move on from integrations. I mean, mostly it was the Opera quick one and the Brave a little bit. Of course, I have to say I'm still trying to do it because I still want mainstream adoption. Of course, I use Beacon, but I think for us to get to, there's a book I'm forgetting I read in college, Bridging the Chasm, about going. We're still in the very early adopter stage. I think in all blockchain names, but especially even ENS and others, but especially Handshake is still a very early adopter stage. So I want to help bridge to more mainstream adoption, and I still believe these browsers are the gatekeepers. I spoke last night at a small meetup here in Thailand, and these people don't know any of these blockchain domains. They don't know ENS. They don't know any of these. They're mostly concerned, can I open this in Chrome? Can I open this in Brave? They're not, I tell them, oh, you need a plugin. Oh, you need to get another browser. They're just normal people. I mean, they're even in crypto. They're in these, like GameFi, and they're not like unaware of crypto, but they're also not aware of crypto domains still, and that was just like 12 hours ago. So
maybe that's an aspect we should emphasize, namely who was responsible for the integration of these mini single page applications from this site card I saw a tweet earlier. Michael?
Site cart. I don't know what you mean by that one.
Discard, CARD.co, I think.
Oh, I don't even know there was any integration with them. I read their startup story of how they started as a business. I didn't know they even integrated Handshake. I mean, the good or the bad thing is, I know there's some people here that think there's some kind of like evil foundation behind the scenes doing things. I mean, anybody can talk to any browser or any website. You know, Noel, to shout out again to Noel.tx from HeyTX. You know, he's talked to a few different browsers for adoption. You know, the idea is we're all directors, and if you need help, if you want to introduce them to me or someone else, but I don't even know about the card integration. I didn't see that. But I know that card.co is a cool site.
Yeah, I just thought it would be a neat introduction for people, as you mentioned, in Thailand who never heard, not only in Thailand, but just casual people like normies who maybe just want a single page. And it would be great because I think not only are these sites very easy to set up, but we could also, they could also receive payments via Handshake. And that would be, I think, not only a neat little project for people to explore the ecosystem, but also really like tangible benefit for them. But I have to find the tweet who was responsible for this integration.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, today's been a little bit, I think it's been a bit over an emotional call for a lot. I mean, I'm getting some various mixed tweets. Some people are not as happy with some of the tokenomics discussions, but I think that's healthy. I think that's what should happen. We have to have hard discussions, and hard thoughts, I'm just reading. I'm trying to keep up with the tweets as I'm doing this. But
I think the problem is some people, I think, might feel threatened, or they feel like, they will negatively affect us. But they really, like, we all collectively have to remember that if the ecosystem is not healthy and it's not flourishing, then all your TLDs and all your investment, or all your emotional investment is threatened, because we are only discussing this to benefit everybody. It's not like we are not out here to get anybody or pump our bags or whatever. We just we are brainstorming how we can establish a healthy foundation. And if there are bad economics, they should be addressed. And that's all we're saying. Like, people really need to calm down and relax. We have no problem with anybody. And like, as I said, maybe some people also, I think, don't like those harsh words like squatter and stuff, and hoarder. Okay, as I said, I have no problem with these people. Buy as many TLDs as you want, keep them. But you, especially those who are maybe a little bit triggered about the potential price increases, let me really remind you, those assets you have, they are worthless if the ecosystem is unhealthy, is sick, and has problems. And if you cannot take problems and push them under the carpet, because they will start to rot, and it will affect everybody. It's not a good thing. So take a step back, relax. We're just having a healthy discussion. We want to hear from you. It's not like we're ignoring anybody. Anybody can come here, join us, and speak their mind, and that's all we're saying.
Exactly. I mean, and this is not new. Evan's been talking about this for at least weeks or maybe months, I think, right? If Evan's still here. And we're just trying to highlight this to this Twitter space, but it's been discussed in Discord. It's been discussed a little bit in various Telegram. So the purpose here is to highlight these discussions so that the as many people in this decentralized community are hearing these thoughts and discussions and have their own opinion. So I think it's healthy that these are brought up.
Definitely, because nobody wants to feel like they're owning 100% of nothing. Nobody wants to feel that way. And that's why, we personally believe that if you reach the people, then the improved tokenomics, you can look at that as being a reward, because that's kind of like a given. But if everyone is kind of like, everyone is in this H&S bubble, and kind of tossing ideas back and forth, and nobody extends the proverbial hand to the prospective end user, then what we get is a group of individuals who were aware of something that was functional or is functional and has potential and promise, but it has no appeal. And I think that's why reaching the people is important.
Exactly.
Well, and
that's
I
what we're
also
trying to do.
hold on real quick.
There's Secrets raised his hand. Hasn't spoken yet. Is that Secret speaking?
Yeah. I want to say something, and I think this speaks to exactly what Namertips is saying, and a lot of everybody is saying here. And yes, we need integrations. Yes, we need people to use Handshake, and yes, we need people to build on Handshake, right? But the reality is that the reason that brought me to Handshake was the real world utility that it actually offers to us, the people. and that has nothing to do with tokenomics, okay? From my perspective. It has everything to do with the way surveillance in the world works on the internet. Okay?
Thank you.
Massimo said something earlier that it was probably the best thing that any of us can do right now. And it's lobby for ISPs to integrate Handshake. And then get every single one of the 13 root servers to integrate Handshake. That would be a win for human society and the internet. Okay?
I love it, man.
Not tokenomics. Just saying.
Well, I do agree with that, and my DMs are open, and I think many here. Hopefully, there's others maybe you're listening to you can all connect to. I know each Twitter space people seem to make new connections, so that's great. But I guess the real concern is I brought it up. Mining is not profitable right now, so in my understanding, and that's a risk to the network, and it's being used as a marketing feature from Brantley.eth to further promote ENS domains, and it's been used right on the homepage of decentralweb.org as a reason not to use Handshake. So, of course, I would love to get it more widely adopted, and that is another path to, of course, increasing the value of the network and the price of the token. But again, this is a discussion right now, and I'm just happy more people are hearing about this discussion.
It goes back to what Namertips is saying, though. We need attention, but we don't need the same attention that UD has. We need different attention. We need enterprise attention, similar to what somebody was referring to in the Discord earlier. Because the fact of the matter is that Handshake solves problems that exist in the world today that have not been solved. It's simple as that. And if you want to make a big splash, go to the people that can actually do it.
Right, but when you go to those people to make that big splash, it has to be more than a white paper layout. Because
I agree. But that doesn't mean that the fact of the matter is that we have to put our attention towards those things for any of that to ever happen. That's the point. We're never going to get attention to us if we don't put the attention towards getting the attention. Right?
Definitely. But when we go, when you go and you seek the attention, and this is not implying that your point is not agreed with. You're spot on. And so we're just adding to the point by saying that when you go and you speak with these individuals about integration, it's always that one question that is the what's next. Okay, so if we integrate this, then what's next? What do you guys have over there that is going to justify this integration? Or if we integrate, and we have to wait how long for there to be some sites or some type of
look at the Flux integration that I just got done, right? So it's literally just about taking small steps forward in the right direction, right? The issue was that there's not enough full nodes, right? So let's solve the problem of giving people an easy way to contribute to the network, right? We have to solve one problem at a time, yes, right? And we have to do it in a meticulous manner, and we need to have constructive criticism across the board, and there needs to be hierarchy, regardless of whether this is a decentralized project or not. There has to be structure. Otherwise, your point is valid that you're going to go and get attention, and they're just going to fucking ignore you.
And the fact that you were able to secure that integration, one thing that I think that should be done is that particular situation should be used as a real-time case study, because there was a reason that they opted to go ahead and integrate HNS. And if we could pinpoint what that reasoning is, now I'm talking about beyond what they say, because you have to keep in mind, a lot of these individuals, a lot of the people that you're seeking the attention from, the integrations from, they also have overhead. Some of them won't say it, but many of them have overhead, and there are things that they have to run past certain people. So if you get the feedback from them with regard to why they're willing to even consider the integration, or why they move forward with the integration, then that will help position everyone to better seek out the people who will ideally integrate HNS. Because going to Brave, going to Google, going to Opera, they have tons of individuals knocking at their doors. And it does not mean that HNS can't get through, but they are in the priority realm now. And with them being in the priority realm, they're looking at not only what's going to keep the lights on, but what's going to keep their brand healthy and stable. And because they have a brand, bad associations spoil useful habits. So if you have a brand that you're looking to build and you want it to be strong, and brands resonate with who? The people. So if HNS is a brand that resonates with people through whatever means, then that's more of an attractive push to whomever it is that we look to have a Handshake integrated with. With no brand and no reach to people, we can knock all day. And the only individuals that you're going to get are the individuals who understand and appreciate the tech. And that integration is only going to last long.
I mean, I'm still studying it. I'm just going to jump in. I think there probably should be some DAO formations. You know, I'm not an expert at all of DAOs, but I mean, I don't think it should just be one DAO of all Handshake, but I think we should form various groups.
It doesn't have to be like formal. It needs to be agreed upon. There's a difference. Because
the standard,
if it's agreed upon, there's accountability. And if there's accountability, shit gets done.
Thank you.
I mean, it sounds easier said than done, I think. You know, just Opera browser, for example.
Mike, think about this for a second. And you know, you are running this. I mean, not running it, but you are directing this Twitter space. And everyone in here backs you 100%, us included. However, one thing that Namer Tips has been discussing early on, from the very beginning, if you go back to that Discord where individuals shunned a lot of what was said regarding culture and standard. We even had a discussion with individuals regarding possibly setting up an owners coalition, because when you think about a DAO doesn't necessarily suit the ownership structure and the ownership dynamic that Handshake is supposed to stand for. That's what the name, that's what makes the Namecheap situation a bit unique, because from our viewpoint, Namecheap should not only be investing in a platform that, you know, properly handles the SLDs and so on and so forth. They need to be appealing to the ownership dynamic. And that's not, we don't know if that's in their plans to do. And maybe after this recorded talk, they might implement it. Who knows? But the point is, there needs to be some type of coalition. It does not have to be formal, but there does need to be a standard in place. And like, you know, Secret was saying, if it's a situation where there are just general guidelines that are agreed upon, then we won't have to come to these spaces. And many of us are just finding out things, and then we're dropping in, and certain individuals are not clear on things. Everyone in here can be a benefit. Like when you have these spaces, you generally see the same people in the spaces. Some people speak more, some people speak less, but everybody, regardless of where they are, they pose a benefit to the situation. And if we have something in place that allows a strong community sentiment to transfer into an ownership standard, we believe that there can be a more synchronized pursuit with regard to adoption and so on and so forth. It's not, Mike, this is literally everyone agreeing, everyone who owns names saying, hey, I don't have to care for the name that you register. I don't have to care about what you're doing with it. But what does this mean? What can we do in this regard to ensure that any name, any person who owns a Handshake name has an opportunity to reap the benefit from that particular integration? Because very soon, if Handshake names start to be resolved or just hypothetically say that right now, every browser decided that they wanted to integrate handshake names. Okay, so now all 7+ million and counting TLDs and their their SLD counterparts, now they're able to go ahead and they're able to be, they're able to be resolved. Then the issue that you're going to run into, out of 7 million TLDs, you're going to have a content issue. Whether it's a lack of content, whether it's going to be certain types of content that a browser is not going to be, they're not going to want to be affiliated with, because again, whether it be business, brand, morals, and ethics, there are parameters that people stay within when they do partnerships, right? And so in this case, if there's a coalition set up for owners to at least have a general consensus that they say, if we're going to be the individuals who are active, because, we got you, heard you loud and clear, Mike, when you sat there and said, I'm doing this for free and I'm doing that for free. Noble, Mike, but it doesn't have to be that way. And even if it is going to be that way, it doesn't have to be that way at the expense of everything just having this bootstrapped undertone. There's enough talent. There are enough gifts. There are enough corporate experience in this talk to put together some type of not guidelines, but some type of criteria that says, hey, if I have a TLD or if I own a Handshake TLDs or benefit from anything that has to do with Handshake, this is what I'm willing to do. And we just hold each other accountable, even if it's a soft accountability, hard accountability. Everybody loves the forks. Let's start forking accountability. How about we do that? We start forking accountability and imagine how many things will spawn from there. Morbius talks about the garden, the fruits and the vegetables, making a very strong point. But you can't talk about the garden if you don't talk about the seeds. You can't talk about it. And what seeds are we planting amongst the people? We hear the seeds that we're planting amongst each other. Everybody's going to walk away from this. Some people are going to sit there and say, Namer Tips was at it again, talking too much. Some people are going to say, you know what, that was the point. But as long as there was a seed planted that makes everyone say, you know what, when I rise tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and modify this and do this a little bit differently in hopes that brings forth a different result. Because I'm going to be honest with you. You all may not necessarily care whether we show up to the next talk or not, but there's time allocated for this. And when we sit there and we have these discussions, it's important for us to cover what's not happening and what we want to happen, but we also have to look at what are the actual steps that we can go ahead. Because if Mr. Seiger, I believe that he's still in here, or if he's not, he'll tell you that in the centralized domain space, everything is about metrics. Everything is about metrics. So where there's metrics, there's something to be measured. And so with decentralization, when that discussion keeps coming up, it's almost like it's like free range. And free range doesn't go over with everybody the same way. So when you say, it's decentralized, Mike, you reiterate that on more than one occasion. And that's why I think that everyone in here appreciates you, because you say that's the thing that I love about Handshake is decentralized. Right, Mike. But decentralization, what does decentralization mean in an era where centralized entities are coming in and they're putting their flavor on what decentralization is? The end user, who is not even privy to what decentralization is, let alone where it fits in the internet, is going to be under the impression that the way that these centralized entities are connecting with them, that's what classifies as decentralization. And you know what we'll be here doing? The moment that they start 1-2ing and knocking out, bringing on people in droves, then you know what the discussion is going to be? That's not real decentralization. That's not real. It does not matter, because eventually what you're going to have to do is that if you want to bring people on, now you're going to have to unteach them what someone else has taught them and make them see your way of doing it. When right now you have fresh minds, people have not come through the doors of decentralized domains yet. And this is the time where those sites, Morbius talked about those one-page sites. Okay, who in the community is working on something like that? What resources do they need to accelerate that output?
There's somebody, I'm getting a lot more messages today. Somebody's messaged me on Twitter. HNS List doesn't know how to use Twitter, is on Discord. He's listening to this through Discord, I think, but somehow, is that true? He's trying to come on stage, he can't. He says, bridging old technology, Web3, proposed a structure for a secure messaging app based on hashes. He's writing me so many, I can't keep up. But there's a lot more developers here. I mean, I think just even the comments of a lot of people here is like, I don't care, I'll just build myself. I just build. I love that. That's kind of, I'm more on that side too. But yeah, we have to be more outbound, like Amber Tips is saying. And I think there should be more somewhat structured outreach. I do agree. I think it's a lot for us to think about. I have a call in 2 minutes. I'm trying to see if I'm literally emailing or if I can change the call. But I think this is very, I don't know. I think we should start to wrap up. I really appreciate you, Namer Tips, and all you do in your time here. I do recognize that, and I do hope you come to the next one. I think we should also I'll do some more homework before the next one. But yeah, I definitely feel like it's getting highlighted right now. We're in a bear market, and yeah, there's more and more of these namespaces popping up everywhere. And even the other ones we haven't talked about, like free names or something, some Swiss company registering trademarks for people to register TLDs. And yeah, I think I agree with a lot of tweets I was reading in the last 12 hours about there's going to be more and more explosion of more namespaces backed by VCs or big investors coming soon that people have talked about. It seems like it's going to keep coming. So I do think we have to stick together and help each other.
And that's important, Mike, in getting websites out with quality content, because let's go ahead and put the nail in this discussion right now as we speak. All it's going to take is for one of those platforms to go ahead and one of those venture capital firms to fund one of these registrars. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to be having this same discussion about content and websites. Unstoppable partner with Eva Longoria. So it wasn't a shock that next thing you know, a few weeks later, they announced that they would be giving 5 million domains to Latina. That was the correlation right there. So let a VC come in and don't let, like take, for instance, Apple. Let's just say Apple. We use them for example. This space is recorded, so Apple, this is not an endorsement. But say Apple, for instance, Apple has exclusive content, right? They have exclusive content, so they have to worry about nobody creating anything that's going to interfere with their platform. If you want to watch one of their shows, you have to use their devices, use their service, and so on and so forth. If Apple was to say back a no name, namespace or, TODSLD, decentralized naming platform, whatever, they could take that exact same model and apply it to domains and websites. And the moment that happens, it's going to be a race up a very steep hill, because now you not only have to not necessarily fight, but you have to compete with a namespace that's not just a namespace. It comes with websites by default. It comes with content by default. And people love to be entertained. People love to transact. They love to do all of these things. And with Handshake, we get it, because a few individuals have said it to us like, well, Handshake, all of that doesn't matter. Handshake, yes, is a ground up situation.
I do believe it's coming. I hear things. I don't know what's supposed to be shared publicly, but a Namecheap, or Namebase, I think he's mentioned it as Spaceship. So, it's supposed to be like an all-in-one solution for handshake names and emails and hosting and website builders, I believe. I've seen a little bit of the screenshots, but
will that result in a centralized situation? Or of course,
I don't know enough yet. Of course, I'll share as soon as I know more. But there is discussions. I'm talking. Mike Carson and I are talking about helping get more integrations for Impervious. I'm also trying to understand. I think each Ethereum contract needs its own integrations for like wallet addresses. I'm not so experienced, but I think each smart contract needs to be like added to these integrations for like wallet payment addresses like MetaMask. And
that wallet thing that's kind of like becoming a default thing now. And the fact that Handshake TLDs and domains as of yet don't have a streamlined solution where I can just take a Handshake name, like something like that right now would probably flip the table over for good.
I think it would be on a per smart contract, like Impervious's domains all in that collection would work for the wallet, but I don't think you can get Handshake integration across any TLD on Handshake. I think it's per smart contract on Ethereum. I don't know if Mike Carson wants to jump in there, but I think any integrations Impervious wouldn't flow over to other bridged Ethereum TLDs on new smart contract.
You'd have to integrate with our contract. I mean, there is to do handshake TLDs. There's that HIP. I think it's HIP 2 or something. So you can actually.
So have you all experimented with that, Mike? Just because that's kind of like becoming the status quo for decentralized names. Have you guys experimented with, names being used for wallet addresses over there where you guys are?
Yeah, I mean that's something we're, Mike and I are gonna talk through. Yeah, it's something definitely, because we forked DNS, so it's. I don't think it would be a lot of code change. It's just like changing addresses and stuff to get it to work.
So it hasn't. Okay, so I guess that's what we were asking. Like, has it been something considering that?
We talked about it in a previous space. There was like a MetaMask forum post to get impervious domains onto MetaMask was a wallet address, and there's some conspiracy theories about why it was like closed ticket, etc. But I think MetaMask was in discussion. Each one, OpenSea, all of them, you got to talk to all of them, So we could just look at ENS domains, unstoppable domains. They list all their integration partners. And then it's like business development. You got to hit them up. You got to fill out the contact form, talk to their guy on LinkedIn, do a phone call, send a proposal. They reply. They send you a quotation. It's most likely not free, I think a lot of people here think integrations are free. I have this feeling most are not free.
No, I think that if you have, I think everyone is thinking, well, not everyone, let me retract that. No, everyone is not thinking of it this way, but some people are probably thinking that the money is the only way. Like, there's other forms of currency. When you talk about what purpose, decentralized domains are going to play, they're going to be the nameplates for a lot of individuals' social currencies. You get what I'm saying? That's where we're moving towards with these names and these namespaces. And so appeal is a really, 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 really big thing. And if you can go ahead and you can reach people outside, I mean, even if there was a lot of capital flowing around to get Handshake integrations, I would still say that it would be important for Handshake to have some other currency it can also leverage to make it more appealing. You get what I'm saying? I think that would be really, 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 really important at this phase. And content, I believe, would do that. There's some things on our end, and this is not, I'm pretty sure that everyone has heard a lot of speaking and so on and so forth. We're getting ready to release some things and do some things. But even with the magazine, we had to postpone the magazine because the maturity of the ecosystem and everything that was going on, it was just like, no, this is not the time for this. And imagine how it felt to do that after everything. You're talking about sponsors and all of this other stuff. The decision was made by the team to halt the release of the magazine because there are still a lot of things that are being figured out. And so when you start to talk about in this magazine, there's an ad for HNS, and it's like, oh, wow, HNS is in here. And there's like no major utility that you can speak of. We could have put out the magazine, but that would have made HNS look a certain way. And there are some notable advertisers in this magazine that have contributed not just for the sake of pushing their own brand, but because they understand that in the grand scheme of this, everybody is in it together. Everyone is in it together.
I think that's the biggest problem, right? So with a lot of crypto projects, it aims to solve a solution or solve a problem that doesn't really exist. So, it's like the creation of a problem to solve it. So, what I was talking about earlier today in Discord was, there's many utilities that this can be used for, but the application of it on Web3 is kind of useless because the adoption rate of Web3 isn't there. So essentially, you got to create a need for that adoption. Well, to create some kind of problem out of the blue, it doesn't make sense. So you take a step back, you look at Web 2.0, and there's more than enough problems in Web 2.0 to take a swipe at. For instance, there are no bulletproof certificates, right? And, we're touting that basing a certificate on the blockchain removes the ability to forge that certificate. Okay, well, that's great, but does it exist? Okay. And if it does it exist on Web 2.0 or Web 3.0? So essentially, the approach I was looking at was, instead of trying to expect everybody to adopt a new technology that's unproven, especially in enterprise America or enterprise world, it simply won't occur. And, having the approach of, well, build it and it will come, outside of trading names, I kind of look at that as like trading garbage pail kids, right? You have this small ecosystem, everybody's in there, they have the great names and it has a value. But if a utility doesn't come along, it will all die and it will all be worthless. So the approach that I'm looking at is, okay, I had two ideas and I was just spitballing. It's not, fully baked, but, I think they're solid ideas. So everybody is looking for that messaging app that nobody can record or, peek into, whatever you're talking about. So the premise behind that was, let's create a messaging app that you point to a hash. So as the names are registered, they're on the chain. You could point to the hash that it was registered on the chain and utilize that for the word. It's not adding bloat to the chain. It's basically, a zero effort. You're just creating some kind of application that's doing pointers. And then you could salt that with a SLD. And, once that message is complete, you remove that SLD and the message disappears. Poof, no record of it. And I mean, that's just kind of like the 10,000 foot view of that. But, there you're taking a new technology and you're solving an old problem and you're giving it an application, and a messaging app that is bulletproof essentially is going to get adoption rather quickly, because everybody is looking for, something like that. Everybody's worried about privacy. Everybody's worried about, having the ability to remain anonymous.
I mean, honestly, as long as I can still beat my fucking meat on Web3, I'll be straight. As long as I can still watch titties and
I guess there's some spammer on here. Hold on.
I'll be good. Anybody with me on that?
It's weird. I don't know. This happens towards the end of every freaking one. Somebody, I don't know. We allow people up here. I can't tell because everybody's so anonymous in HNS. I was trying to review this guy's profile, and I should have tested. I should have believed my hunch.
Nobody's perfect, man. Don't sweat it. It's all good. So,
but I don't know how to. I mean, it's just, I guess, something. Anyway, keep going.
The other thing I was saying is, okay, we're touting that certificates on Handshake are unhackable. Well, essentially, I mean, nothing's unhackable, but it's a lot more secure than, basing your trust on some central authority that is only as good as their security. Okay, so, let the rubber meet the road. Put it to a utility, bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3, not trying to centralize Handshake by any stretch of the imagination, but just use it as a utility to show the value of the chain and the value of what can be accomplished, and it will spread organically. People will see that here is a technology, here is a practical application that has a use in the real world. A company like Cisco is going to see something like that because essentially every product that they create has some kind of reliance on DNS and the security behind DNS. 90% of the security business is based on a DNS flaw. Let's face it, right? So, I've been working in the enterprise security space, enterprise networking space for over 20 years. And I think the real key to adoption isn't just creating more websites. I mean, let's face it. What is the value and what is the draw to the average user that has an IQ between 94 and 100, sixth grade reading level? That's your average person on the planet. What is the draw for them to go out and install a plugin or find another browser and go to something that they truly don't understand, because half of the tech folks you talk to can't wrap their head around the technology?
Wow. Well, you know what? When you reference the app and the anonymous underpinnings of sending a message, that's your benefit right there. So you have that. And the key would be to put a face on that, because and when I say a face, I mean a really practical way of introducing the concept, but also verifying that it's different, because you'd probably agree that there are many companies out here that are pushing the idea, or if they're not doing it, we'll see it very soon. Everybody's going to be saying that, oh, what we offer is private and what we offer is decentralized. And it's going to be, like you said, through that rubber meeting the road, that you're going to find out that a lot of things are not, private and decentralized. And so when you talk about an app like that, that does also does in fact live up to what it says that it does, there has to be that practical way of validating that it in fact does it. Because the average person, if they send a message, like, okay, think about it from the standpoint of Android and Apple phones. The most top layer distinction that you are sending a text message from either an Apple phone or an Android phone is the fact that when you're sending one from an Android phone, one that hasn't been tampered with, so to speak, it's gonna be a green message, right? And then with Apple phones, it's gonna be a blue message. That simple distinction resonates with people, because if they see a blue chat in like maybe a meme or posted online, they're like, oh, that has to be from an Apple phone. And it could very well be from an Android phone that someone just changed green, but just on a general level, they get it. They're like, oh, that's a blue bubble, that has to do with Apple text. Oh, you see a green one, that has to do with Android text. The same thing would have to be in place for an app that truly allows you to send untraceable messages. If that was going to be the app for example, it'll have to be some way to confirm that it actually does that. And from there,
Right.
if you can confirm it, it take off.
I agree with your sentiments. I mean, look at the investing business, right? And investing historically has been a lot of smart people. But you create this app that has really funny emojis, and it's like stupid simple. That's what the public wants. That's what the public needs. They're not going to rush to a complicated solution that requires multiple steps. If there's more than one step, it's beyond the capacity of 90% of your audience. It's just simply not going to be adopted.
There you go. You just said it. And that's why we were talking about appealing to or reaching the people. You have to reach the people. And when you reach the people, all of the adoption and integration, that just comes with the dominoes falling. Because if you have enough people who are into whatever it is that you're offering by default, like when you look at browsers depend heavily on traffic. Traffic comes from who? People. And what do they go through these browsers to see? Content. So you can connect with the people via the content and via a utility that they can digest at their stage of understanding.
All right, I think we're kind of getting towards time. I mean, I think it's at the 2-hour mark. Luckily, I could push my call a bit. I've been interested in these conversations. I'm getting feedback. I think we're going to run a poll this time. And if you could help us from Sky Include to run like a Twitter poll and or like a Google form or some kind of a form. I think we should collect some more feedback about, the way we run these Twitter spaces, how we can organize them better, how we can maybe even have some action points to take action rather than just waiting for next month's call. I got that feeling. I actually have a lot of ideas from this call. So I hope people are all enjoying it. I just think we should, I feel like 2 hours is enough. Mike Carson seems like he left. I don't want to cut the conversation short, but I know some people have been commenting it's a little bit long. So just trying to respect everybody's time. But I can also collect feedback from others on that as well. Unless there's any last short words somebody wants to put in for their part before we cut.
I just wanted to respond to H&S List. He asked a question like, why would anybody want to go through all this process to like create a website on any of these names? The cool TODs. That's it. Like for a restaurant to have their name .lunch or .dinner, that could be a super easy way to get them interested, because otherwise they'd have to wait for ICANN to eventually open up a round for new TODs, and we're at least 4 years out from that. And they're probably not even going to have like those names on the docket because they're too generic.
So to your point, I think I read a statistic at one point that 60% of businesses don't even have a website, right? And as cool as it may be, to the little ecosystem that we have going, the general population, most of them think that crypto is a scam. A lot of people ran, for all these different coins, got in as it was being pumped, lost money as it was being dumped. So I think the attention span of the average consumer that would think these are cool or, would potentially want to run and jump into this market, I think it's been greatly reduced due to the spamminess of most crypto. And again, I'm going to keep going back to what I said before. Most crypto projects are a solution to a problem that don't exist. Solve the existing problem with it, and you don't need marketing money. You don't have to go out and spread the word. It's going to spread itself. It's that simple.
Yeah, of course. I agree. Building a product over marketing is, marketing something that's not clear or not a big enough problem is a good point.
And if adoption is more than 2 steps, forget it. It's not going to happen.
HNS, that's one of the reasons why when I was privately chatting with Brandon from Brave, I think what people are misunderstanding is I think Brandon really sees the appeal and understands the technology of HNS, but you cannot blame Brandon for, at the end of the day, for him, it's a business decision. So for him to implement some nonsensical naming system pumped by VCs, that's a business decision. But I think from my private conversations with Brandon, he understands the technology, he likes the technology. So if we can finally, wrap this up and finish the integration of Handshake into Brave, it will show the end user, the people who really don't understand any technology whatsoever, they will realize that at the end of the day, Handshake can, replace the current flaws in the DNS setup, and they don't have to understand the technology. They can.
But Mr. Webb was referencing the appeal to like the restaurants and them being able to have lunch at their restaurant. HNS list made the point about the number of businesses that don't have a website. Now, when you think about ICANN, I'm not sure, but someone might be able to correct me. If they don't, they can do it. Like have .restaurant, right? Because when you think about like what are donuts? They're formerly donuts. The name doesn't ID. I think it's like ID Me or something like that. They've launched a campaign that is I think it's like create beyond your dot or beyond the dot or do more than a dot. Like they have a whole commercial for this thing, and they own X amount of, TLDs that have been centralized TLDs for quite some time. But with all the decentralized talk, now they're getting their time with regard to adoption. And then you look up and we were looking at something not too long ago, and ICANN has a round of names, company names that are supposed to be released, right? So what's going to happen is that if Handshake solely relies on the name, then it requires the community to look at it from maybe we're going to have to start marketing more of you can customize your name, because the variation of names that are soon to exist is going to be vast, right? And there's going to be a lot to pick from, and individuals will do so. So when you reference that the names themselves will bring people in, that's kind of like a double-edged sword.
All right. I think we're at a good place to wrap up today. Thank you all. Today's been a little bit more of I feel like we ripped off the Band-Aid a little bit more today. But that's kind of my purpose of tokenomics. I knew that was going to happen, but I think it's healthy. I think we have to face it and discuss it as a community and make sure as many people in the community hear these discussions and proposals, and I think that's the only way that we can grow. And so anyway, I think we'll wrap up now. This has been recorded. This will be, again, thank you, Terra Spaces. He's here as a listener recording this. He'll be sharing it. We also keep an archive on Handshake.Mastermind, Handshake name, hosted website on Handshake to watch these or listen to these as well. And thank you all. We're going to run a poll and a survey, and we're going to try our best. I'm also have some ideas I got from this, so I hope all of you. And please connect with each other if you saw or heard someone. I think that's really well encouraged to make some relationships. So thank you all again for coming here.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome job. Thank you.
All right, let's keep pushing.
Thank you. Hey,